Hello, everybody. Michael Falato here from Full Throttle Leaders, the podcast that we've been talking about with go-to-market strategists, top of funnel folks, AI folks, and we got a really great guest for us today, Josh from Databricks. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good, Michael. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Tell me your role at Databricks and what Databricks does.
First of all, Databricks is a data and AI company, and our goal is to help organizations, both big and small, anywhere from early stage startups to Fortune 10 companies, democratize data and AI. Essentially, our goal is to make AI usable within these enterprises. And my role is helping support the Databricks for Startups team on the go-to-market side, working hand in hand with our founders, helping bring founders into the Databricks ecosystem and build products, technologies, softwares on top of Databricks.
And how many startups do you work with now?
So we work with hundreds of startups that range anywhere from pre-seed to Series B,
Mhm.
ranging anywhere from fintech companies, health tech, manufacturing tech, et cetera. And a lot of these startups are essentially working to disrupt their industry verticals, and they're trying to figure out how to, build agents and agentic solutions to essentially disrupt the enterprises that they're selling into.
And who do you mostly deal with at these companies?
We're generally working with the founders and co-founders of these companies.
So they're like, what, 10 to 50 employees or
Yeah, it really ranges. I mean, now with AI, you're seeing, 1 to 2 person companies come out with, full-fledged products and they're finding product market fit super early on. I think AI is really democratizing the way that, a lot of these companies are able to build and able to build in the most efficient way as well. But it really ranges. I mean, sometimes you have these engineering heavy or research heavy teams that are trying to figure out how to solve the world's hardest problems. And so we're working mostly with technical teams to help figure out what that looks like and how to help them better go to market as well.
is it a particular industry? Is it like marketing tech, biotech? Like who do you work with? Who do you or who's the best ideal customer profile?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, right now we're seeing a lot of companies that are disrupting traditional SaaS. So there's a lot of companies right now that are, for example, in go-to-market that are trying to figure out, how to build and compete with the next Salesforce, as an example. So a
Okay.
lot of software, mostly B2B platform and software companies, um, but it really ranges. So we also see a lot in financial services as well. So a lot of fintech companies that are, trying to figure out how to, disrupt the banking industry and, how does AI, you know, influence the financial services market. You'd be surprised that a lot of these regulated industries are actually, more ahead than a lot of people think in terms of adopting AI. And a lot of the startups that we're working with are, trying to solve the challenge of, selling into these, large financial services or healthcare enterprises.
And how long you been at Databricks and like what is your journey to get there?
Yeah, so I've been at Databricks now for 4 years this month in April. Um, I was at Microsoft for about 6 years before that. In similar roles, I was started my career at Microsoft as business development rep back when um, Azure and public cloud was just becoming a thing back in 2016, and a lot of these conversations were how to take a on-prem data center that was sitting in someone's closet and move that to public cloud. And a lot of it was, just helping get people comfortable with the idea that, their data is safe and secure and somewhere that it's not, sitting where they can actually physically see it. Um, so that was a lot of my conversations back at Microsoft. And then I was fortunate to continue to do well in various sales roles and go-to-market roles. My last role at Microsoft was leading go-to-market strategy for their small, medium, and commercial business unit, where I spent time, trying to figure out the customer acquisition strategy for their digital sales team. So Microsoft was investing in these digital sales centers across the globe, and they're hiring a lot of these inside sales representatives that were focused on new customer acquisition. And so my role is trying to figure out how to, combine account-based marketing as a lead funnel with our digital sales model, and then um, go to market in the most efficient way possible. Primarily focused on Azure, their modern workplace solutions, and then Dynamics 365 as well.
If you could basically say in the last 6 to 12 months you've learned something that's incredibly helpful, strategy, tech, advice, or something that burns you, and you're like, I want to tell the folks on this podcast, like, I did this, it wasn't a good idea, but I learned from it. So either a learning from a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I'll say one, maybe more personal one from a career perspective is, just saying yes to everything. I think a lot of, my career has really come from saying yes to as many opportunities as possible. And then you'll start to see kind of the snowball effect of, good things happening, more opportunities coming from you. I think it kind of goes to the old saying of, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And part of that is just saying yes to things that come up. You're in a role, whatever it might be, and you get a new opportunity, say yes to it, and just see what comes from it. I think the flip side of that is when you start saying yes to too many things,
Yeah.
you start to naturally spread yourself, too thin, and that also isn't a good thing either, right? Because if you try to do, a great job at everything, you're going to do a mediocre job at a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I would say that you have to kind of find the inflection point of, saying yes to things to a point and then trying to figure out how to say no.
Yeah. It's one of those things I did in the last 5 years where I was like, okay, I've been in sales for 20 something years, 25 years. I could build a go-to-market strategy for a team, which I did as a VP of sales. But why wouldn't I just do it for a bunch of companies and make 60, 70,000 a month versus
Yeah.
200 a year? So that's kind of the inflection point I think everybody should look at. Like, I've worked in the space. What's my shingle? What's my company going to be? Because, someone like you and me, after a certain amount of years, you're like, I could probably do at least some of this better, faster, cheaper. And if it's even a service, not even a whole, like a whole platform or an IP, people need your help. So that would be the one advice I would give to someone like yourself. Think about 10 years from now, 5 years from now, like what's next? How do you build up your thing? So tell me about who's on your LinkedIn and like what is LinkedIn since you're at Microsoft? What has it helped you kind of basically build out your whole strategy at all, or like what type of tools are working
Yeah.
well for you on your own GTM?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, LinkedIn is great. I mean, from our perspective, we use LinkedIn, both as a way to, I think, personally brand,
Yeah.
what we're doing and, the conversations that we're having and, essentially act as, the face and of, in this example, Databricks, right? So acting as the face of Databricks for, this particular segment that we're in and help, provide that credibility for founders and co-founders of these startups. But it's also just great for things like this, right? Conversations that you and I are having as well, wouldn't happen without
Yeah,
tools like LinkedIn
without
as well.
LinkedIn and Sean Green.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, so tell us like who should get a hold of you and why they should get a hold of you, and maybe if you want to, I know we have your email address on your video there, but
Yeah.
is there any other thing that you want people to know before we sign off?
And no, I mean, email and LinkedIn is great. I mean, from always happy to have a conversation with anyone. Have a lot of conversations with early in your career folks about, getting into, tech sales or tech go to market more broadly. And happy to give my point of view to the extent that people find it valuable. But any, founders as well, always happy to help with founders on the go to market side, talk all things AI, talk all things Databricks. So happy to help.
Is there a particular like like for your specific approach where you got to go Series A seed round and Series B, but you can't go past this revenue or this stage, or do you have any guardrails?
We'll work with all startups that you know we try to find startups that can see value in something like Databricks, right? So a lot of times that are startups that they're just getting to market with a stitched together product, built on a bunch of cloud native services or open source tools.
Yeah,
There's a lot of value in consolidating that on top of Databricks. So we don't necessarily really look at revenue size or stage. Again, we're pre-seed to Series B is where we spend most of our time right now. But really startups across the board, across all industry segments and verticals.
great. Well, thanks for your time. It's great to get to know you, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Really appreciate it.